What's up, guys? We're back with another Black Series review, taking a look at a full wave today. This is a set of 5 figures from the Bad Batch wave. So this is definitely one of the more anticipated waves right now, and it is a very stacked wave. So we've got, again, 5 figures. We've got Crosshair from the Bad Batch itself. We've got the Elite Squad Trooper. So it's like a gray stormtrooper, or clone trooper rather. We've got ASAJJ Ventress. We've got Katan. That's a big one for sure. And then we've got another Bad Batch member. We've got Hunter in this case as well. So there are, again, 5 figures. It's an 8-figure case with 3 double packs. So it's a very, very stacked wave, especially for folks who are trying to complete this Bad Batch. We've got them here, of course, in the standard packaging for the line. You've got the current, kind of oblong, weird shape packaging with the figure in the window, artwork down the spine, and then the backs of the box have larger shots of the artwork, as well as a slight bio for our figures. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. So we're going to start with Katan because she's probably the one most folks want to see right away. So here you go. Don't say I never gave you anything. So let's see what she can do. See how she moves around. She is kind of familiar territory. I feel like she is very Sabine-like, while at the same time being very much that figure sort of brought into the new style that we're seeing. So she does move around pretty well. We've got a head that can look up a decent bit. Like, it's not too far, but she can look up enough. It's mostly her hair that gets in the way. She can look down a good bit, though. You've got tilt side to side. The neck, of course, is independently articulated, so it's going to move with you, and then you can swivel all the way around, all that good stuff. You've got arms that go out at the shoulders. They only go out about that far, though, and then they rotate. There is not really a butterfly joint in here that I can tell. If it is, it's recessed in there, and it's not going to do you good anyway. We've got rotation at the elbow, and then we've got those new deep cut elbows, so you get better than 90 degrees, which is really nice. It's very aesthetically pleasing too. We have vertical hinges and rotation on that wrist, and we have a vertical hinge on this wrist, which is really good since she is a gun wielder, of course. And then we've got a diaphragm cut, so she goes backwards a little bit, forwards not too much, side to side, and then you've got rotation there as well. It's mostly this breastplate that kind of gets in the way, but she can hunch over slightly. Legs go out about that far. Surprisingly, the holsters don't get in the way because they're not connected to the legs, which is really good. They're just connected to the belt. They kick forward 90 degrees. They do kick backwards quite a bit as well. She does have a thigh swivel. And then we've got our new single jointed knees, better than 90 degrees, but still not like kicking your own butt. Good, so they're okay. There is rotation at the knee as well. And then we've got our rocker, and we've got our hinges at the ankles, and despite the armor plate there, she does have really, really wide range when it comes to those ankles. So she is pretty normal. There's nothing really crazy here when it comes to articulation. Again, I do think she is very Sabine-like in many ways, but in the sense that it's that figure kind of brought forward with a lot of the new articulation schemes they're going with. She feels very par for the course while still kind of feeling like a figure you might have already owned. All that said, she looks fantastic, and that's ultimately what I really care about with this figure, because I kind of knew how she was going to move just based on what we're doing with Black Series lately and how female figures work in general. But I was really hoping that they were going to nail the aesthetics, and I think they did a really good job here. There is a decent amount of paint applications on this figure. Sculpt is really well done. And then to top it all off, she does have a really fantastic likeness. So when it comes to displaying this figure without the helmet like we've got here, I think you're going to be in for a treat because Hasbro did a really good job with this one. Paint applications where they are applied are really clean and crisp. We've got weathering on the bracers, down here on the boots, and then of course you've got her kind of signature blue color scheme with her clan insignia there on the sides. Everything's tampoed and painted really cleanly, nicely done. Sculpt is really nice. I don't have any distinct issues with the way this figure looks. You know, I'm sure somebody could come and maybe nitpick the hell out of this thing, but that's not what I'm here for. I do think that the figure just at a general level looks really good. The breastplate has a nice luster to it. There's even some wear on it, so you've got this sort of gunmetal color for the actual armor itself, but then there's a little bit of silver dry brushing on it to help make it look worn and just battle hardened and stuff like that. So she does look really good. She does have her slightly smaller jetpack on her. This does come off if you want. It's just a peg. Pops on. It's actually pretty firm in there too. I have no expectation that that's going anywhere. Sculpt good. Paint detail on that is really nice. So again, it's just a solid looking Katan figure, and I am very much happy with this one. She was not my most anticipated figure in this wave, but she is definitely creeping up on my list just because of how much fun this figure is right out of the box. And then again, like I said, the likeness, the head sculpt, the photo printing on this one is probably one of the better examples we've gotten recently. There's been some pretty heavy hitters in recent memory, but this one is really well done. I think the likeness is spot on. Paint applications are very clean and crisp. The headband is a nice delineation between the face and the hair, so it kind of breaks up that sculpt and breaks up that kind of weird line work in some instances. The hair doesn't really have much to it in terms of paint, but it catches the light enough that I'm not sure it really needs it. So it's got that nice shock of red, orange hair that sits on top of a very, very well done head sculpt. I think from just about any angle, you are going to be happy with this one. And honestly, this is an instance where I kind of don't want to put the helmet on because she does look really good. But we do have some accessories to talk about, which means we're putting the helmet on. And I mean, I guess depending on whichever way you want to go with, you're going to be really happy with this because I think the helmet on this figure is really well done as well. It is going to be one of those instances where it might look a little big in some respects because there is, you know, it's not just a head, it's a helmet sitting on top of the head. So the head has to look correct to begin with, then we're actually getting a helmet over top of it. So it might look slightly larger than it needs to be, but I don't think it's really a big deal. Paint on it is pretty solid. There's a lot of paint applications on this too. Tons of weathering all over it. The visor looks really good. It does have a moving rangefinder as well, so that's a nice little touch. And it's kind of a signature thing, so I think they really went all out on the paint apps and just making sure that they got this helmet as right as possible. It is very easy to put on and take off. I don't know that I worry too much about paint issues or scuffing with this one. I've never had a problem with that on any Black Series figure that does have a removable helmet, so you know, your mileage may vary on that one. I am not concerned. And then she does have her guns as well, as far as her accessories to sort of round her out. So we've got just sort of, you know, the standard little Mandalorian style pistols here. Nothing too crazy. There is a touch of brown paint for the grip there. Otherwise, it's just sort of a dingy sort of gray plastic. Not too much to write home about, but exactly the things she needs. She doesn't come with a Darksaber or anything like that. So if you're wanting to kit her out with something like that, you'll have to grab the one from Moff Gideon for now. But she does have everything she needs to round her out as a character. Next up, let's tackle the Elite Squad Trooper. So this guy is basically just a Phase 2 clone that is done up in this very Shadow Trooper-esque armor. You got me right there, just because of the fact that I love Dark Troopers, and I love the Phase 2 style clone helmets. So I'm already on board to begin with. This is, of course, a newer style of figure, so we do have some updated articulation here as well. This is also one of those troopers that has the head underneath the helmet also, for whatever reason they decided to do that. So we've got that. So you probably already know how this guy's going to move, but let's run through it real quick. Head looks up, head looks down, a little bit of tilt side to side, full rotation. The arms go out. You've got the rubbery shoulder pad, so he goes out pretty far, 90 degrees. And then you've got a slight butterfly joint in there, but not really much of anything as far as movement, but it is there. We've got rotation. You've got your rotating deep cut elbows, so better than 90 degrees, but it's still technically a single joint. And then we've got our hinges and rotation at the wrist. He's got the torso diaphragm cut, so backwards, forward, side to side, and then rotates all the way around. Legs go out about that far. Unless you start twisting the legs, you will, you know, sort of run into an issue with the point that's on the armor. So they kick forward about that far, but if you twist them, they'll go even further. Just work with it, because this point right here always hits the crotch piece on these guys. You've got your thigh cut. We've got our double jointed knees, standard double jointed knees here. And then we've got our rocker, and we've got hinges down at those ankles. Not much backwards because of that little clip on the back, but pretty good on the forward kick. So pretty standard stuff, nothing too crazy here when it comes to this guy. It's basically what you would expect to find currently when it comes to troopers. Aesthetically, I don't really know what there is to say about this guy that we haven't already said a million times before when it comes to clones. It's a clone trooper. It's a clone body. It's a clone. I think it's fine. I like the coloring. I like the Shadow Trooper-esque design here, but there's really not much to say. If you like clone troopers, if you like Phase 2 clones in particular, you're probably going to be happy with this one because it's yet another one. And of course, it's done up in a really dusky, shadowy, kind of gray, blackish color. And there is like zero paint on this guy. He's basically what you see is what you get. A lot of gray plastic with black accents as well. So there's some paint, but there's not a whole lot. He does have a really nice looking helmet though. You've got this ridge that runs down the top. You do have nice sculpted detail where it's needed. And then you've got the green visor on this guy, which I do think is a nice little change up. Just a little bit of flair for this type of trooper. And then he's got these, you know, the little silver marks down there. So there's not a whole lot to really talk about this one. I mean, I hate to say that on a figure that's brand new, but how many times can we see a clone trooper and kind of pick out a million different things that are new? It's a Phase 2 clone in a nice dark gray. If you like Phase 2 clones in dark gray, you're going to be just fine with this guy. He does come with a singular accessory. He comes with the standard clone trooper blaster. There is nothing new here. It is also done up in a nice dusky, shadowy gray. So again, if you like that gun, if you like this color scheme, you are going to be sitting pretty. Next up, let's tackle the Bad Batch figures. So we've got 2 Bad Batch members in this wave, so we're going to take a look at Hunter first. And I'll say right off the bat, I have no attachment to these guys. I mean, I've seen the episodes, I know who they are, but I don't have any attachment to them yet. I have very much been looking forward to these figures though, because it's unique clones, and that's exciting in its own right. It's more unique clones. Like, I love getting the commanders and the captains, that kind of stuff. These guys are that kind of thing, but to a different level, really. So there's a lot to be excited about just to be able to complete this kind of team. There is some new stuff going on here, obviously. There's some challenging stuff when it comes to articulation on these guys, but overall, I think we've got some pretty cool figures to talk about. So let's see how he moves around. This guy and Crosshair are basically the same figure in terms of overall construction, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Head goes up really, really far, down really far as well. Independently articulated neck as well, as usual for the new stuff. Super far tilt, and then you've got rotation all the way around. Arms go out at the shoulders. They've got a shoulder pad, and it's actually like wrapped around the joint, so it will move with you. You just have to sort of watch it. It's not really going to get in the way. Just, you know, make sure you're paying attention to where it's going. You've got the single deep cut rotating elbow, and then he's got a lateral hinge rotation on his left, and he's got a vertical hinge on his right, which is a trigger finger hand. You've got your torso cut here, so he goes backwards pretty far, almost too far, because you can start to gap on him. And then you've got forward, tilt side to side, and then rotation pretty far. Legs go out a decent bit. Honestly, they go a lot better than I expected because of, you know, the whole clone trooper armor thing. They do kick forward a little bit worse though. You have to really rotate them to get them to go all the way forward than usual. And I'm kind of worried about them starting to scuff. Like, they're scuffing when I do that. You're raking along pieces of plastic there, so watch what you're doing. You've got your thigh cuts, and then we've got our single jointed deep cut knees. I am having kind of an annoying time with these because the detents in these are just like really, really harsh. So you've got straight leg, and then they immediately go to this, and then they go to this. So that's it. Like, if you want to move them, like, it really doesn't want to be anything other than fully locked in straight, and then at like a 45-degree angle. So you're going to have to play around with that when it comes to posing them. And then, of course, they rotate there as well. We've got rocker, and we've got our hinges at the ankle. They go back a pretty good bit for a clone, and then they go forward a good bit as well. So there is, you know, obviously some different sculpt and a little bit different engineering there. So he moves pretty well. There's not really anything too negative to talk about here. It's a very normal, new style of Black Series figure. The one thing that I am definitely a, you know, slight concerned about is the knees, because for some reason the detents are just seemingly fighting against me when I want to pose him. Otherwise, though, not too much complaining to do when it comes to this guy. Aesthetically, these guys kind of fill a weird space because we all know that they're clones, but they're all so different that if you didn't really know, you might not know that these were clones. Like, you wouldn't expect that. Their armor is very different. The faces are, of course, very, very different from your average clone trooper. And the overall styling is very different. So these are, you know, special commandos, the last resort kind of guys to call in. And I think they did a pretty good job here. I don't specifically know tons and tons and tons about all the minutia of their armor. So if there's something that is wrong, there's probably a very good chance I'm not going to catch it. it. But I think in a general sense, these guys look pretty solid. They are a little bit beefier than your average clone trooper. Like, they seem a little bit bulkier. There is definitely more wear and tear on their armor. So there's all sorts of like battle damage and scuffing on the legs. You've got the silver paint to kind of make it look like they've been worn down. You've got scuffing all over the shoulder pads. There's like dents and dings all over it, scratches all over the armor. So a lot of places for light to catch and just to sort of play tricks with the overall design to make it look like it's got a little bit more detail than is already painted on. There is a decent bit of paint on him though, so you've got, you know, the red stripes that run down all over it, the varying layers of gray and dark gray plastic. Some of that is paint, some of it is just molded plastic. You've got the silver accents, and then we've got the tampoed, whatever these are supposed to be. I don't really know what they are as far as the armor details themselves, but I like the sculpt. I like the sizing on these guys. They seem, again, they seem to be a little bit more sturdy than your average clone trooper, so I think they look pretty cool in that way. He does have a backpack that really, as best I can tell, serves no point for the figure. Like, there's nothing to, you can't do anything with it. Crosshair is able to store his weapon on it, but Hunter cannot. There's nothing to do with it as far as I can tell. It does have decent sculpt, some paint apps, and it's got some of that more scuffing on there as well. I do think, however, that at least right out of the box, the most defining and interesting thing about this figure is definitely the face, because I mean, this looks nothing like a clone trooper, and obviously they all look very different from the standard Jango clone, but I think the sculpt here is really good. This is very much something like what we see with the Rebels characters, where they are that animated figure or character taken into a more real-world aesthetic, because this is not exactly a cartoon look. It's not exactly what we saw with the second Ahsoka Clone Wars figure either. I don't think it's even that level of Black Series. This is very much a realistic style to me, but I think it looks really good. The face paint is really well done. The bandana is nicely done. The little skull tampo on the side, really clean and crisp, very easy to just distinguish what it is. And then the face printing on it is also something that looks really good. No issues with it here. I think he looks fantastic. It's just, again, it's a distinct look from that animated style, with them giving him a more real-world touch to go alongside every other figure that we already own. And then as far as accessories, this figure and Crosshair as well, they're pretty loaded. I mean, you could consider the backpack an accessory as well. I mean, I figure you're probably going to always use it for the most part anyway. But other than that, he still has 4 extra things. Of course, we've got a helmet for these guys. So just like we saw with Bo-Katan in this wave, the Bad Batch figures are also helmetless figures that get an accessory helmet. So you do have to put that on. I mean, it just pops on. It is not as easy as Bo-Katan, at least not for me, but it pops off and it'll go back on, as graceful as I can make it, and it looks pretty good. I do think that this is another instance where it might look a little bit oversized in some respects, but I think the sculpt on it is really good. I mean, it's obviously, this is a very clone stormtrooper kind of transitionary helmet almost in many ways, and I think it looks really nice. Paint is really well done, tons of it, on a helmet in particular. There's a lot more than we normally see with the varying levels of reds, blacks, whites, this sort of off-white color, and then you've got the gray as the base, and more of that kind of scuffing and wear and tear as well. So he does look really good there. I mean, I'm not sure what I'm going to display these guys with, because I really, really like these unhelmeted head sculpts, but I'm a sucker for a bucket too. So we've got that. We've got a knife for this guy, and there's not too much to talk about with this. It's a black hilt with a silver blade with some sort of yellow circuitry on it almost. What's cool though is that it does actually have a place to live. So you can pop it into his little wrist guy right here, and he can have it on him at all times. I do really, really like that, because he doesn't seem to have storage for his weapons elsewhere. He doesn't have anything else as far as storage goes, which is kind of weird for a trooper. At least this kind of trooper anyway. We have the sort of standard pistol that we get with troopers, like, you know, like Rex kind of pistols, things like that. And then we've got this kind of monster little blaster as well, which is pretty cool. There's a decent bit of sculpt all over it. No paint to speak of, really. But he does have this guy as well, which I do really like. It's unique. It's different. And as far as I know, we've never seen this before, right? But there's no place to put it. You can't like put it on his backpack or anything like that. There's no place to hang it or hook it or anything like that, which I was kind of hoping for, because I do love me some weapon storage, but he does come with a lot of stuff regardless. Knife, 2 guns, helmet, and the backpack. Now with Crosshair, I'm not going to go too hard on articulation because he is almost the exact same figure as Hunter. There is different stuff here, but overall they are the same. So really I'll just talk about what's different. His head is basically the same, but he does have less hair, so it might help a little bit. He goes up really far, down really good, super far tilt, side to side. Arms are the same, so you know they'll go out. They've got the armor pad that wraps around there. The torso piece is different though. It's a different piece of sculpt. And then you've also got the harness that sits over top of him. It doesn't really get in the way, but of course I figure it's worth just showing it off. So he goes backwards. Basically the same thing as Hunter. You're going to get the gap if you go too far. And then he goes forward, and this thing has enough give that it's going to move, but it's going to look kind of funky when you do it. It's going to sort of pop out. You've got really good tilt side to side, and then of course full rotation, and this will stop you from, you know, swiveling him all the way around, but I mean that's just as much as you'd ever really need him to do, so it's not really a hindrance there either. The detents in the knees, the same kind of thing, so they're really going like, you know, straight down 45 degrees and then slightly better than 90. Otherwise though, they are the exact same. You're not going to see anything different here, so they move pretty well still. My only real sort of pseudo gripe is those knees and those detents, because they are kind of posing a problem, no pun intended, when it comes to, well, posing them. Aesthetically though, this is my favorite of the two guys on the Bad Batch squad so far, and it's mostly because of what's different about him. His backpack is different, and it's far more utilitarian this time around, which I do really like. I like the harness with the, you know, with the shells in there, and I really dig this head sculpt. I think it is tremendous. Where Hunter's is really good, this one's even better, and there's just something about it. Like, you would not want to meet this guy anywhere. He just looks like a curmudgeonly old dude, and you wouldn't want to mess with him. But I do really like, you know, everything that's different. So he's got a different shoulder pad over here with like this sort of, I don't know, blade sticking out of it, whatever you want to talk about. One thing that's interesting is that since they do share so many parts, he has the port for Hunter's sort of knife sheath, but he has nothing there. So you've got this sort of hole in his arm, which I guess isn't a huge thing, but at the same time, it's kind of weird. I don't particularly care for that, but you know, you're probably not going to see it all that often either. I think the harness is really well done. The actual strap here, it's got that sort of leather texture to it. Paint applications are really nice. The belt is really well done with a really good stripe of shockingly bright silver paint, which of course gives us a holster, and I love weapon storage, so you've got that. The backpack is, of course, like I said, different, which will provide weapon storage that we will talk about here in a minute. It's a very unique and weird design, but it does absolutely work for what it's supposed to do. Other than that, though, I mean, they are the exact same figure, really. He does have different paint on this pauldron over here. It's a bigger skull. I don't know if that's maybe a change between the two that's supposed to happen or what. I don't know, but I think it looks better. You can more clearly see that that's supposed to be a skull here. Otherwise, same figure, same midsection, same hips, same legs, all that good stuff. It's a really nice figure. It just has a few little extra flourishes that I think just look a little cooler, frankly. And then he's topped off with this pretty killer head sculpt, really. So, you know, you've got the scar that runs down the eye. He just has this crazy scowl about him too, the shock of gray hair, and it's again another instance of a really good sculpt that is accentuated by very nicely applied photo printing. It's a fantastic sculpt. He looks tremendous. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Another instance again, just like Hunter, where we get the very real world, or at least more real world interpretation of a cartoon character, and I think it works really well. It's gonna flow nicely with the Rebels characters, for example, in terms of that overall aesthetic. And then it's going to look really good with any other actual human folks that have been made into action figures, not just CG characters that have been made into action figures. So great sculpt, great paint applications, and a really cool looking design. And then last but not least, we've got our Ventress figure, my most wanted figure in this wave, not because I really care overall about the character, but because she is super overdue. I have wanted a Ventress for a while, and it's just been so long, and we finally have her. I don't know that this is the specific version that I want. I'd kind of like an older one. Well, not an older one, but one from a older time. Further in the past would be a better way to say it. And I do think she looks pretty good. There is some interesting stuff going on with this figure. She's not too weird in terms of articulation. It's pretty par for the course, honestly. It's just mostly hidden by a really nice skirt piece. So we got a head that can look up. Not too far, surprisingly. She can look down really good, though. You've got tilt side to side. And then we've got full rotation. Arms go out at the shoulders. You do have a butterfly joint in there. It doesn't really do anything, but it is technically a butterfly joint, I suppose. We've got a swivel. You've got a single jointed deep cut elbow, so better than 90 with swivel. She's got lateral hinges and rotation at the wrist on both wrists. She does not have a torso cut. She has a waist, a ball peg at the waist. So she goes backwards about that far, which is pretty good, honestly. Not so far forward because of the belt design, but decent enough. You've got tilt side to side and then, of course, full rotation. Let's hike up that skirt for a second. And we've got legs that go out about that far. They kick forward better than 90 degrees. They kick backwards way farther than you're going to need. We've got our thigh cut, single jointed, rotating knees, of course, and then we've got our rocker, and we've got hinges down at those ankles. So despite the fact that she is encumbered in some ways by soft goods, she is very well articulated. You just have to get under there to find it. She is very, very much a normal figure and does not have any issues that you would expect to find on a figure that would otherwise be like a traffic cone, you know, like the recent Dark Gray, for example. Aesthetically, I do think we have a pretty nice figure here, despite the fact that this isn't necessarily the look that I want. I mean, I really would like the true classic ASAJJ Ventress, but this still looks pretty good. It's a very unique look for her. It's a little bit flashier, and it certainly stands out amongst some of the other figures in this wave. Katan, of course, has some brighter colors, but there's a lot of grays in this wave, so she might have sort of faded into the background in some respects otherwise. But she's got this super bright skirt, the purple sort of belt that hangs down, or sash, or whatever you want to call it, and it's still a very ASAJJ look. So you've got, you know, the skirt with like the exposed chest. We've got the hand wraps, which are painted really nicely. The chest is painted pretty cleanly. The arms are painted pretty cleanly as well. You've got the exposed back. Nice musculature sculpted in there as well. The belt is a rubbery piece, but it doesn't get in the way of anything. And this sash piece is really nicely done. It's all sculpted. All of that, the sort of wrinkling and the line work that you see in that gold is actually sculpted and textured. So it helps accentuate it when it hits the light. And then this soft goods skirt is really well done. It's very robust. It's not flimsy. There's a lot of material to it, is the best way to say it, without it being over encumbering. It doesn't really get in the way of the figure. I mean, you can still get her legs to go out really far despite the fact that it's on her. So she's going to be posable enough while still having a really nice looking piece of soft goods. Again, the best option when it comes to a character that has a dress or a skirt, again, in comparison to that dark gray figure, because she needs to be able to move, and it definitely allows her to do that. And then, of course, she is topped off with another very specific look for her head sculpt. It's different. I mean, she has some different iterations throughout the years, and this is a really well done head sculpt as well. It is just sort of a blank canvas in many respects with the skull. There's no sculpt on it, but the paint work is really nicely done on the back, and then the paint on the front as well as the photo reel for the eyes looks fantastic. It is, again, just like we saw with the Bad Batch figures, it is a slightly more realistic take on a cartoon character that, again, I think works really well. This very much is easily identifiable as ASAJJ Ventress, and it looks really good. Colors are clean and crisp. There's some gentle shading on the face as well, just to bring out that sculpt. And I mean, there's really nothing for me to complain about. She looks really good. That is ASAJJ Ventress. And then as far as accessories goes, she has, well, basically everything she needs, which of course would be her lightsabers. So we get two red bladed sabers, and they are the sort of Dooku style curved hilt blades, and they can be pegged together to give her saber staff. I've never really cared for this too much because of how kind of goofy it is with this specific shape that it makes. I'm sure, you know, it looks fine in the show and in any other source material, but I don't know how well it translates into an action figure. And then it does have the ability to remove the blades, and you can peg them onto her belt, onto these little holes that are on her belt. They are not the easiest to get into because, well, it's a belt and it's on the front of the belt too, and it's a pretty big peg, but you can get both of them on there if you want to store them. I have zero intention of doing that. I'm not sure I have a single Black Series figure with their lightsaber stored on them in any way, but they do look good. The hilts look nice. A little bit of paint on them. Of course, these are unique and new for this particular figure. There are little notches on them right here that you're going to have to kind of watch when you are putting them in her hand, because they're going to have to slide in her hands a certain way. It actually threw me for a loop for a second. I'm just an idiot though and wasn't paying attention. But you can get her to hold them just fine. So there's no real concern. Just be aware of how you're putting them in, or they might sort of sit a little janky. Otherwise though, good stuff. So yeah, this is a really solid wave of figures. There's not much to complain about. If anything, this is going to be one of the most solid Black Series waves that I can think of in quite some time. Katan is an excellent figure in pretty much every respect. She has great sculpt, paint, articulation. The likeness is fantastic. The Elite Squad Troopers, really good trooper figures. If you want that trooper, go for it. If you don't, it's probably something you can skip. But for folks that like army building, this is another solid trooper. The Bad Batch figures, outside of my kind of hang-ups with the knees, I think are both really well done. Tons of accessories, great new pieces, great new sculpt, excellent faces, excellent photo reel, and then of course ASAJJ Ventress, despite the fact that she's not the version or the look that I truly wanted, this is a really solid figure. She has great implementation of soft goods, great sculpt, she moves really well, and then another instance of really solid photo reel. So that's going to do it for this look at the Star Wars Black Series Bad Batch wave. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.